Microbial inputs during early life are important, and we're all familiar with the fact that certain types of bacteria, pathogens, can induce inflammation in the body, and this itself can have downstream effects later in life. In part, we know through microglial priming, a process that can last throughout the lifetime. But there are also immunoregulatory microbial inputs. So the other side of the coin, there are bacteria that have evolved or co-evolved with mammalian systems in a way that they are able to induce anti-inflammatory or immunoregulatory responses. Part of the hygiene hypothesis is that we've lost contact with those types of bacteria that serve this ecological service by moving from farms, rural areas to cities. If we have an imbalance, you can get a failure of immunoregulation and increased chronic low-grade inflammation that can persist for years. People that grow up on farms with this diverse microbial environment respond differently to the psychosocial stressor compared to young, healthy men that grow up in cities of at least 100,000 people and do not have pets. I can explain why we insisted that they do not have pets. But the people that grew up on farms, the young men that grew up on farms, they reported feeling more anxious and more stressed. And in fact, they had higher glucocorticoid stress hormone levels at baseline. But the people that grew up in cities had a massively exaggerated inflammatory response to the stressor. And there's two types of neural connections, general categories, that allow this bidirectional neural communication. One you may have heard of, which is the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve innervates the gastrointestinal tract, and it has thousands and thousands of nerve fibers in the vagus nerve. Some of those are going from the brain to the gut, and some are going from the gut to the brain. And so that's what we're talking about when we refer to this bidirectional communication. One of the questions that predicted high alpha diversity was this question: in an average week, how many different plants do you eat? The responses were less than 5, 6 to 10, all the way up to over 30. And the more vegetables, more different types of plants individuals ate, the higher the alpha diversity of the gut microbiome. Also, along the lines of nutritional psychiatry, dietary interventions significantly reduce depressive symptoms. And the common theme among all these dietary interventions: reduced intake of junk foods, high fat, high sugar, ultra-processed foods, while replacing these with high fiber, nutrient-dense alternatives such as vegetables. Psychiatric disorders associated with decreased regulatory T cells. It didn't show the data for that, but we know that's the case. Decreased immunoregulation and increased inflammation. And microbiome-based interventions to prevent anti-inflammatory immunoregulatory signaling. To increase anti-inflammatory immunoregulatory signaling might be considered for prevention and treatment of psychiatric disorders.